The following is a presentation of the Mat Talk Podcast Network.
It's time to go on the mat. The Cedar Valley's longest-running radio show devoted entirely to wrestling. Brought to you by Rolling Ford and the National Wrestling Hall of Fame Dan Gable Museum on 1650 The Fan.
Welcome to On the Mat. I'm Jeff Bradley. This is the UNI PWC edition that we do once a month. We're going to get in the show here in just about a minute, but I want to tell you who's coming up. We've got Carter Isley. He's a redshirt freshman, heavyweight for the University of Northern Iowa. He's going to do the first segment. The next two segments are going to be from legendary coach Bob Siddens from Waterloo West High School. And he's also a UNI grad. I think actually they called it Iowa State Teachers College back then, but we're counting him as a Panther, and it's just going to be a great couple segments with Bob. But we're going to start it off with Carter Isley. Carter, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. How about yourself?
Not too bad. I know you guys are back in school, and it's kind of a rough day out there weather-wise. And I remember when I was going to UNI, that had to be the windiest place on the face of the earth. I don't know if I'm assuming it's still the same way, isn't it?
Oh my gosh, it's crazy. The wind is terrible. Like, I go down back home to Albia, and the wind is nothing. It's so much colder up here. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, I don't know what little precipice we're in right here, but it just always seems like the coldest, windiest, like just a huge wind tunnel. And it's brutal walking across campus.
Oh yeah. Some days are worse than others, but the wind gets you sometimes.
Hey, so we're going to start you off with the two easiest questions, or possibly the hardest, but I think they're the easiest. They're from my kids, Jake and Morgan. So your first-time guest. Everybody has to go through this. My daughter Morgan wants to know what your favorite color is.
Favorite color? Gold.
Gold?
Gold.
That's the first time we've ever had that. We get a lot of purple, obviously. Get some red, some black, but first time gold. Good answer. And then yep. Jake's got a two-parter for you. He wants to know what your favorite food or meal is, but also wants to know your favorite wrestling move.
Favorite food? Pork chops at Texas Roadhouse. I enjoy those pretty good.
Nicely
then,
done.
Favorite move? That's a tough one, actually. Whatever works, pretty much.
All right.
Say that.
I'll make sure he understands that.
Whatever works.
So you already talked a little bit about Albia. Now, why don't you tell me a little bit about your hometown and what you're majoring in here at UNI?
My hometown of Albia, it's a small town, about 4,000 people. We have a pretty good wrestling tradition there. Nick Pickrell, a former UNI Panther, he's an assistant coach down there. And I don't know, he's been a big influence on my life. He's helped me through everything when I was just a little kid, all the way up to now in college. Yeah, so Albia is a good town to be from. I like it a lot. A lot of wrestling, very competitive down there. So I like it a lot. And my major in college right now is I'm undecided. I'm not for sure what I want to do, but I think I'm leaning towards business.
Okay, good. Now, you've got, if I remember right, were you always in Albia, or were you a Tumwa somewhere? I thought you were in a different town. Than did you move or open and roll?
My freshman year, I was at Sheraton.
Oh, that's right, Sheraton.
I moved through the summer, and my sophomore year, I started going to Albia.
In Sheraton, not a very big town either, so it probably wasn't a huge adjustment. It's pretty much the same neighborhood.
Yeah, not at all. It was only like 30 miles apart. I already knew a ton of people in Albia, so it wasn't really much difference.
And then let's go back to when you were a youngster, or possibly even going into junior high. How did you get introduced to the sport of wrestling?
My dad used to wrestle in high school, and when I was younger, he just took me to a couple wrestling meets. The first couple wrestling meets, first couple years, I never run a wrestling match. So they thought I'd end up giving it up, end up being a basketball player because my mom's pretty tall. But I stuck it out, and here I am today, still wrestling.
Well, and that kind of leads into my next question. Most of the people I talk to, it intrigues me the early success or lack of success, and it's and it's almost one way or another. It's not, I was a 500 wrestler for 2 or 3 years and then got a growth spurt and then placed at state and won state. It's either like they were placing at AAUs real high or they didn't win a match for like 3 years and they stuck it out. So talk a little bit about that. Like, how old were you and how humbling was it that you were struggling so bad that you kind of gave it up for a little bit?
Well, in preschool, I didn't win a match my preschool kindergarten year. And that's when my parents were thinking I should give it up. I shouldn't really be going out for it anymore because, I'm not good at it. I can't win. So it wasn't, really any point. But I stuck out. And then, my first grade year, I ended up doing a lot better. I started winning tournaments and everything. I ended up going to Super Pee Wee State, got second.
Okay.
It was a big deal. Then all throughout my career, I've always placed the state. So, after those first 2 years, that's when I made my jump. Okay. Then I started getting a little bit better, so it was good.
So I know you talked a little bit about Nick Pickerel. I want to expand a little bit more on that, and maybe even go farther back. I'm assuming your dad, because you mentioned him, but who kind of were your early influences? And it could be wrestling, or it could be just being raised as a son.
My dad was a big influence on me, big time. He always pushed me to do he always pushed me, but if I wanted to do something, he made sure I had to do 100%. Made sure I always give my best effort for it, so I'd become good at it. Then Nick Pickerel, oh yeah, he's been there all up throughout my wrestling career. When I was in Sheraton, I would drive over to Albia and go to wrestling practice that he'd run. I'd always go to his camps at Albia. So he was always big. Then actually in high school, my football coach, Jerry Staten, he was a big influence in my life. He's just a really smart guy, and he's really intelligent with his words. He has a lot of wisdom, and he's a pretty good guy. He's probably a big supporter for me too, so I like him a lot.
So we talked about some of your, when you were really young, some of your failures. When did you kind of mentally know, I'm actually pretty good at this, and I think I can either place at state or win state? Was it junior high, was it elementary, or was it actually in high school when you were competing against the bigger boys?
I don't know. When it was kind of my freshman year, when I ended up getting 8th my freshman year at state, but I had a torn labrum. And it was tough all year on me, but I'm still beating guys with that torn labrum. That kind of gave me more confidence. It's wow, I'm beating these older guys. I'm not even healthy and I'm beating them. So that kind of gave me a lot of confidence. It gave me a lot of boost for that recovery time. Once I got my surgery on my labrum, it gave me a lot of time to think. I'm wow, I can really compete. It made me just put my nose down and go.
Do you look back at that 8th place and kind of keep it? Is it kind of mentally like winning a state title because you're probably undersized heavyweight? You got 8th, which isn't phenomenal, but on the other hand, it is phenomenal because you're hurt. You're a 9th grader. I think you were a 9th grader at the time, and you end up placing in the Iowa State tournament. So, do you kind of compare it that's almost like winning a state tournament as a freshman heavyweight?
Well, at the time, I was actually 182.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but I don't know. It was a pretty stacked weight class that year, and I ended up losing the quarterfinals right away, and that was kind of heartbreaking. My dream was to be at least a 4-time finalist, but I ended up getting beat, so I was kind of mentally broke there. So I had to wrestle another messed up round, placed, got into placing round, and I kind of fell apart a little bit. I was kind of emotionally upset. I kind of took a little setback after that, but after on that grand finale, when you're walking out, it's just you get the chills and stuff. And it's wow, I want to be back at this situation. I want to be wrestling instead of watching, and that's kind of was the big motivation for me.
Yeah, that grand march on Saturday night's one of the coolest things to see, and even cooler to be in it. So I totally agree with you there. Now, when you were young, were you always pretty big for your class? Because right now, and I'm going to take a little shot in the dark here, you're 6'2", 250 right now.
Yeah.
Okay. I knew you were right in that neighborhood. But have you always been big for your class, or did you get a couple of growth spurts and that put you there?
I was always the biggest kid usually like the bigger kid in my class. There's usually a couple bigger than me, but I was usually one of the bigger kids in all my classes growing up. So I'm kind of used to being the bigger guy.
So now we talked about that freshman year. Let's fast forward to your junior, senior year. You won state both years. Does one or either one of those mean more to you than the other? Or do you kind of look back now, it's been 2-3 years. Are they about the same?
Honestly, my freshman year it was like, not my freshman, my junior year, my first one was the one I remember the most. I don't know, I just worked so hard that summer for it. I pushed myself a lot for that. And I don't know, that year before I got second, so it was just a big relief once I got first. It was just an awesome feeling. Like, I looked at my parents were crying, I ran up and hugged them, and it was just one of the greatest moments of my life. But then my senior year, it was an awesome moment too, because it was my last high school match, won state. It was just the year before I won it, so I was expected to win it again, and I don't know. It's just the first one was a lot more special to me than the second, I felt like.
Yeah, a lot of times it seems like you put pressure on that second one, and it's almost not as enjoyable as the first. Not saying the drive's not there, but it's almost a relief when you win instead of jubilation. Is that a good characterization?
Oh yeah, definitely. It's just like after I won my senior year, I'm like, thank God it's over. Like there was just a big old weight on my shoulder just fell off. I'm like, thank gosh, not gonna get made fun of, not get trash talk. So it was just a big old relief once that state tournament was over my senior year.
You're listening on the mat, 1650 The Fan. It's Jeff Bradley. I'm talking to Carter Isley. Carter, you were a heck of a good football player too. Talk a little bit about your high school football experience, and then lead that into, was it a tough decision to wrestle or play football in college?
I had a really good football career, actually. I was a 2-time first-team All-State running back, which is kind of hard to believe, being a heavyweight. Then we ended up making the Dome 3 years in a row. We lost in the semifinals every single year. Kind of disappointing, could never make it to that final one, but it is what it is. But my decision for football and wrestling, it was kind of tough at the beginning because, honestly, I really wanted to play football. But then that summer I went to Fargo, wrestled both in freestyle and Greco, and I ended up doing really, really well, a lot better than people probably expected. Then a lot of coaches were a lot more interested in me, were coming to my house more. I'm like, this is probably it. Then I decided there, I'm like, I'm going to be a wrestler. And wrestling's tough on the body, but you honestly don't get, I don't think you get dinged up as much. And I like wrestling a lot more too. It's all about you, not you specifically, but you do it for the team. But when you go down on that match, it's all about you, and I like that. I like people count on me going out instead of me count on 10 other guys, like on a football field. I like that a lot better.
So you kind of had, recruitment, you had it kind of double what everybody else had. Most guys are getting letters and calls and texts from wrestling coaches. Now you're getting it from wrestling coaches and football coaches. Did it ever get overwhelming, or did you have your parents help you out with it?
Sometimes I got overwhelmed. It's wow, there's a lot of schools out there looking at me that really want me, but I don't know. I talked to my parents. I wanted to stay kind of close, but get a little ways from them. But I don't know. It wasn't really a tough decision. I visited some schools, and once I came to UNI, I knew right away. Me and my mom got in the car. After my visit, I looked at her. I'm like, this is it. I'm going here. And I don't know. I feel like once you know, you really know.
So how many visits did you take before you decided on UNI?
I took a visit to Nebraska for wrestling. I took one for Iowa State for football, Iowa for football, then Iowa for wrestling, then UNI. Then UNI was my last visit, and I knew instantly that I wanted to go here.
So you told your mom right when you got in the car, did you commit to Coach Schwab the day after, that night?
No, that night I called him. I'm like, hey, Coach, I want to be a Panther.
That's pretty cool. That's real neat. So how have you found the adjustments from high school to college, and not only academically but also athletically?
Academically, it was a lot bigger jump. I thought I was a pretty smart kid in high school. I didn't really have to do much, didn't really have to study much, and I'd get an A on the paper or get an A on the quiz. But I come here, quizzes and exams are a lot harder. You gotta pay attention a lot more. You gotta study a lot more. You gotta get a tutor. It was just a lot. It was a lot of adjusting to do, but I think I got adjusted to it pretty well. Then for wrestling, small things go a long way. You end up finding that, and you just gotta be tough. You gotta be mentally tough. You gotta go out and attack a lot more. It was a big eye opener coming up here. Wrestling with blades, especially. You just gotta do a lot more. You gotta push yourself a lot more. The more you push, the better your results you'll get. So
we got just about 2 minutes left in the segment, Carter. You've won a couple tournaments this year. You're having a pretty good year, but you just got back from Southern Scuffle, and you didn't place. So I've got a couple questions, actually. When's the last time you didn't place in a tournament? I think it's probably been a while, hasn't it?
7th grade, Tulsa Nationals. Right after I got beat out, that was the first thing I thought of. I'm like, wow. I couldn't believe it. I talked to my dad. I'm like, man, I didn't think it was ever going to happen. So coming off that disappointment, what are the couple things, the key things you think you need to work on or improve on to obviously never let that happen again? Attack more. I got to attack, and I got to hand fight more. I got some. I'm not gonna lie. I got some pretty good moves. Not good moves, but I got good shots, and I'm pretty athletic for my size, so that helps a lot. But I don't use it that much in matches. I get tensed up. I go out there and I kind of freak a little bit, and I freeze up. Mm-hmm. So I gotta just go out there, be calm, and go after it. Go after what I want. I just gotta open up more and do my thing.
Yeah, you know what? I agree 100% on that. So just a little less than a minute left. Just a couple comments on that recruiting class you went with, if you want to throw out a name or two and a funny story about a guy, or just the general feel of that class that you're in.
I feel like we have a really good class. We're still kind of learning a little bit. Some guys need to adjust a little bit more, a little better, but I think we got a good all-around class. We just got to a lot of us need to get healthy, and I think we can do some big things when we get older.
No, I totally agree. I really appreciate you taking the time today, Carter, out of your hectic schedule. And we'll be back on the mat in just a few minutes.
24 hours a day, 7 days a week. When all you want is sports, all you need is 1650 The Fan.
Welcome back to On the Mat. This is Jeff Bradley. And next guest, I'm just pleased as punch to have this guy on the air. Not only a great wrestler, great coach, just a great person, Mr. Bob Siddens. And, Bob, I'm going to start you off with a couple easy questions here. It's for my kids. My daughter wants to know what your favorite color is.
Well, for a long time it was green. I guess maybe the grass was green and it was green. But you tell your daughter, maybe that was my favorite color, green.
Okay. And then my son wants to know what your favorite food is. And also, when you competed, what was your best move?
Okay, my favorite food?
Yeah.
Well, you tell your son. When I was a young lad, I really enjoyed eating.
Yeah.
But actually now, at 92, at that time, I lived to eat. Now I just eat to live.
Right.
But
right.
So I don't know what my favorite. A Reuben sandwich I enjoy, eggs, most anything. I guess one of my favorite soups now is tomato basil.
Oh, yeah.
Soup. But I don't eat that much. I probably eat a maybe a couple times a day, and but food has not been that exciting but I don't find it that exciting.
And then how about your favorite wrestling move when you were...
Excuse me?
Your favorite wrestling move, either something that you did, you perfected, or maybe your favorite move that you wanted the West High guys to
well,
do.
In my coaching career and all, I always think of wrestling as position, action, counteraction, and control scrambling.
Mm-hmm.
And a half Nelson or a whizzer or a... there's so many moves, and it's kind of... Actually, as I watch them sometimes, and I watch the wrestlers and all, I like a lot of action. I like to see a lot of action. And I would tell my young lads, and I had some young lads that really were state champions because they wrestled good position. In other words, they let the other guy make the mistake, and they would take advantage of it.
Right. So you said you're in your 90s now, and I know you were for years an avid swimmer. Are you still swimming?
Well, I swim a couple of times a week with my grandchildren. But my main exercise anymore now is I have a little puppy dog named Teddy, and we go walking quite a bit. But I enjoyed swimming a lot. I was swimming 5 or 6 times a week at one period of time there at the YMCA, and enjoyed it immensely. And I actually, Jeff, when I was in Waterloo, I taught swimming. I taught swimming at the country club for many years.
Is that right? I did not know that.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
Yeah, I was there for many years. The old country club out Sunnyside, out on the east side of town, and I enjoyed it. And so I've been involved with swimming for so many years, along with the wrestling. But many times people would ask me, what is your favorite sport when you were in junior high and high school and college? And I would say during the fall it's football, and during the winter it's wrestling, mm-hmm. and during the spring it was track and baseball. So I never really, it's kind of sad now that when I was coaching at West High, we had over, I'd say probably 120 guys out for wrestling. And there was the 10, 11, and 12, where now they're lucky to get 30 or so.
Right.
And so I always think the young lads and lassies, they're missing out on things without, going out for a sport. They're missing out on it, and but they've got so many gadgets and AirPods or what pods, and
that's right.
That type of thing, and I wish that they realized that there's so much there, like football, and wrestling, and track, and baseball, and swimming, and that they could get involved in. And I really respect the young lads and lassies that do get involved with athletics.
So let's get back to the swimming. One last thing. I heard this, and I want to see if you can verify it for me. So when you were 85, did you swim 85 laps? And then did you hit milestones like that? I heard that, and I see you smiling. I think that's probably true.
Well, I don't know. I guess maybe when I was at the Y in Waterloo that I did swim. I kept trying to swim the number of times for my age and all. Then it reached a point where I wasn't doing it anymore. But yeah, you were right. And I don't know where you heard that from.
Yeah,
but,
I got some sources now. I poked around a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, let's go back to you grew up in Eagle Grove, and coincidentally, I did too for 10 years of my life.
Oh, you were in Eagle Grove.
From first grade to 10th grade, yeah. So, I'd see your name on the wall, and I'd see all these legendary guys. Well, I didn't know who you were, but then years later, I'd met you and become friendly with you. But let's go back to when your formative years, growing up in Eagle Grove. What do you remember about those days? Was it a good town and good place to be?
Oh, it was wonderful. It was wonderful. And as you, Jeff, when you say legendary, I guess when you call me as a legend, I know you're using the word pretty loosely, but at the same time, yes, I had very fond memories of Eagle Grove. Actually, Jeff, I I was born in Council Bluffs, and my father, we left Council Bluffs, and he had a job as a baker in Eagle Grove, and so I was in the 6th grade, and I think the world of Eagle Grove. I have a sister, Pat, that lives in Eagle Grove right now, and a lot of my friends. Ed Ellsworth was, I was very close to a lot of people, and it was a wonder. And that's where Bill Nelson is, and there were a lot of wonderful people from there, and then so I was there until I graduated in 1943 from Eagle Grove, and then went into the service. And about that time was when they had the they were just celebrating it not too long ago, the bombing of
the Pearl Harbor.
Yeah. And I remember the Sunday afternoon. Sunday morning, we were listening to that on the radio and all. And I have a twin brother named Chuck, and Chuck and I then decided we were going to go into the service. So we went into the Air Corps. But again, I repeat, Jeff, I have such fond and wonderful memories of Eagle Grove and the people that lived in Eagle Grove. And while I was in Eagle Grove, there was a real good wrestler that came to Iowa State teachers, Champ Martin.
Yeah.
And Champ Martin was from Algona, as you know.
Yeah.
And Champ was about 3 or maybe four or so years older than I, but Champ was always my hero.
Yeah, I remember those days. Well, obviously not those days, but years after that. And it was that North Central Conference for years and years was the best conference in high school. I mean, you had Humboldt, Algona, Iowa Falls, Eagle Grove. It was good competition.
It surely was. And it Clarion was such strong.
Yep.
The strong with Dale Brand that was there.
So then you placed 2 times. You're a runner-up twice in the Iowa State tournament. Where did they hold the state tournament those 2 years?
Well, it was kind of interesting, Jeff. When I was a 9th grader, I cut down from 95. The coach, Les Cottrell was his name, and he talked me into going down to 85. So I cut down to 85, and was a runner-up at that time. But it was interesting. I had the guy that won the state at 95. I had beaten during the season.
Okay.
But those things do happen. But in the different weights, so I probably went 85, and then I went up to about 118, and then I ended up in high school at 145.
Okay.
And so at that time, I guess it was 145 my senior year.
Now, the state tournament wasn't in Des Moines, though, was it?
No. The state tournament actually was in Fort Dodge at one time. It was really up in New Hampton one time.
Okay.
And that goes way back when I was a freshman. It was at New Hampton, and sometimes the wheels start turning, and I'm thinking now, I better get this right, because sometimes I can forget what had happened here and what happened to there. But it was at Clarion for a times. The state tournament was at Clarion and at Fort Dodge. And then I said at New Hampton, and then from there it ended up in Des Moines.
So then it was just at Clarion High School then, or Fort Dodge High School, is that right?
Yeah, it was the state tournament was at the Clarion High School. Yeah, things have changed so much and all, and as I think back of all this stuff, but now, me being 92 years old, a lot of reminiscing and a lot of interesting things that have happened and all.
Well, let me ask you this. So then I know you came to Wells. I call it, in the University of Northern Iowa. It was Iowa State Teachers College. And you graduated. You went back home to coach for a year, went back to Eagle Grove.
Yes. What happened there, Jeff, was that when I actually came out of the service and I was living in, kind of keep track of things, I was went from Eagle Grove, then I lived in Fort Dodge for a while. And because my father then got a job as a baker there in Fort Dodge. And so I had a lot of wonderful friends there, Ray Carlson, and I could go on and on and on with a number of people there in Fort Dodge. Mm-hmm. And so then, while I was at Iowa State Teachers, I had another year. The young men that you saw in this picture that I gave you, I had one more year of eligibility, but I thought if I would graduate early, I would go ahead and get out early enough to get a job, because it was tough to get jobs, and there were a lot of these guys like Keith that ended up in Algona, and so many people that went here, there, and everywhere. And so I went ahead and graduated 1 year 1 year early out of college to try to get out and get a better job. And then the job opened up in Eagle Grove. Mm-hmm. And one of my first state champions was Tommy Chelsvig.
Is that right?
Yeah, Tommy's in Webster City right now, and I keep in touch with Tommy, and I keep in touch. For a while, I kept in touch with the Grays that came from Eagle Grove, Ron Gray and Bob Gray and Billy Gray. And I even ran in and refereed a couple of Ron Grays, or Billy, I guess it was, because I refereed the national tournaments for a number of years. Coaching was always number one to me, but at the same time, I enjoyed officiating. And I was fortunate enough to work the NCAA for about probably about 24 years in the Big Ten. Then I went down and supervised the officials in Des Moines with Bernie Sagal when he was there, and Dave Hardy, and all of those people.
So then you go, see, I guess I would look at it that you were going back to Eagle Grove, your alma mater, and it'd kind of be somewhat of a dream job, but you only spend a year there, and then you come back to Waterloo and you go to West High. How does that happen that you go from?
Well, what had happened there was, Jeff, when I was at Eagle Grove that 1 year, and I had some wonderful young lads. They were just great guys. And Tommy just still had another year left, Tommy Chelsvig, and some of those guys to wrestle for me. And Finn Erickson from Waterloo, and Don Blue, the one I spoke of. They came in one Sunday morning and said that a guy by the name of Roy Gerard was retiring. He was going back to farming. And I had mixed feelings because I loved it at Eagle Grove, and I had very mixed feelings, but I talked it over with my wife and family. And so one Sunday morning they came in, and I said, well, I guess maybe I will go to West High. So that's where I ended up at West High and was there many, many years.
So you were there from 1950 to 1977. And I couldn't believe this when I read this. Your dual meet record, 327, 26 losses, 3 ties. Back when, they don't tie anymore, but you could. I remember when you could tie. Just about a minute left in this segment. Can you talk a little bit about just overall looking back and having over 300 wins and the pride and the thought process, going through that? Well,
I had some wonderful young lads, and I had a lot of guys out for wrestling, and those guys made me look like a pretty good coach. And we had lots of fun together and did a lot of things together, and I came very, very close. And I have such wonderful memories and things that transpired and have taken place.
So I know you coached, obviously, Dan Gable. Here's a question, and I don't know if it's going to be hard to answer or not. Potentially, when you're looking at him as a junior high guy or a high school guy, did you see all that success coming? The national championships, the Olympic championship?
Well, I would say that when I think about Daniel, he was such a hard worker. I've had some young lads that were actually had more God-gifted ability. Tom Huff had a lot more, went on to be a national champion. And I was, like I said, I just happened to be at the right place at the right time and had, I think, 14 or 15 guys that went on to be national champions. And one of them was Jim Harmon, that was at Iowa State Teachers. And I could tell you wonderful stories about Jim. And Rich Bennick was another one,
right.
Went to Ames. And so many stories that I can think of those young men, and I keep in touch with them. Rich is in Hawaii now, and Jim has passed away. But sometime, Jeff, I can maybe not put it on the radio, but I can just sit down and visit with you. And I think of like Jim Harmon from Rags to Riches, and Rich Bennick was really a character, very physical, but really a character. And I had some wonderful times with all of them.
Well, Bob, we're going to take a short break here, and we're going to pick up right after this minute.
Log on and listen online at 1650thefan.com, the online home of 1650 The Fan.
Welcome back to On the Mat. I'm Jeff Bradley, talking to Bob Siddens. Hey, Bob, let's get into that juggernaut West High team, just teams that you had that were just so phenomenal. And this might be a little unfair question, but is there one or two that stick out in your head that were really the cream of the crop that you coached back then?
Well, Jeff, I really had such wonderful young lads, but the one particular team that I had, I think that year we had 6 state champions. It was Tom Huff, Lowell Stewart, Frankie Lane, sometime Fran Augustin, I think, was a runner-up, but I think there were about 6. And some of them have passed away. Some of them I do keep in touch with. But I really, it seemed like, Jeff, that every team that I had, the group that I had, like Jim Harmon back with Winder. I hear from John Winder every once in a while. He's in Cedar Rapids right now. But Harlan Jenkinson, a lot of those guys went on to be Big Ten champions and national champions at Iowa. And, remember McCuskey then that left Iowa State Teachers and went to Iowa.
Right.
And I think back of Iowa State Teachers with Han Norderly and Munn Whitford and Mendenhall and Starbuck. Starbuck was my football coach, and Dave McCuskey was my wrestling coach. But again, I keep repeating it, Jeff, the sport of wrestling and these young lads that I had at West Waterloo and at Eagle Grove and whatever, they were my whole life. And it's very, very sad now because I think I told you earlier, over 100 of my old athletes have passed away. I'm the one that should probably go before they, but that isn't the way it works. And another interesting thing, Jeff, about 25 or more have gotten a hold of me and they've said, "Coach, you'll be proud of me. I'm a born-again Christian." And I said, and when I had some of those young lads, I wouldn't have believed them if they said good morning. So it's funny how life is and how these young people change. But again, I keep repeating the sport of wrestling, and I'm thinking to say to you, the sport of wrestling has been good to both of us.
Been very good. So that must feel just incredibly good that people, after all these years, guys that you coached, your athletes, your students, are letting you know that they're a born-again Christian, or letting you know where they are and how they're doing. So obviously you impress some sort of morals on them or leadership qualities while you were coaching and teaching them.
Well, like I said earlier, Jeff, those guys made me look like a pretty good coach, but golly sakes, we sure had a good time. And it was a kind of a family. It was kind of a family. You know, I kind of think of them, my old wrestlers and all, as I say prayers or when I go to bed, I think of my family, my faith, my friends, and my memories. And those friends are people that I've been involved with wrestling, and people like you too, Jeff.
So if you take one or two of those best teams, because you've been around wrestling the whole time, it's not like you coached a while. I mean, then you officiated for years and years. How does your teams back then stack up with teams now? Do they compete with them, or do they might actually even beat them?
Well, I probably am a little prejudiced with the young lads that I had, but there are some good wrestlers around now. But the thing that is very sad to me, and I wish I had a magic wand and could change them, when I was coaching at West Waterloo, we had a sophomore team, a junior varsity team, and a varsity team. Mm-hmm. And never once did we ever have to forfeit a match. Never once. And that would I read in the newspaper now where the forfeits that take place and this that happens and that, and it's very sad, and I don't like it, and I wish I could do something about it. But I'm not able to. But I run into some of the young lads and some of the people in the sport of wrestling today, and they're very interesting. Actually, Schwab is kind of an interesting story. I had one of my wrestlers who was a state champion for me, Billy Andrews. Now, Billy Andrews was the Schwab's coach in Osage. Mm-hmm. And so there's so much of a connection of things like that. And I remember when I supervised the officials down at the state tournament for about 20 years and all, and the Brands, Terry and Tom Brands. And at one time I said to Daniel, I said, boy, those little Brands guys, they're pretty feisty little guys. And he said...
yeah, they are.
and he said, yeah, Coach, I've had my eye on them. Well, then they ended up on Gable's teams there in Iowa.
So you had a ton of success, won a bunch of team titles. You also have a handful of second-place finishes. Now, depending on who you talk to, second's the worst thing that can ever happen because you didn't get first, or more the way I look at it is you guys competed hard and you earned second place. There's nothing to – so how many – I guess what I want to ask is kind of what's your take on second place, and how close were you to winning like a couple more titles, like just a half a point, point and a half in some of those probably?
Yeah, a lot of those things happen, and I would say this, Jeff, some of those runner-up teams were probably better than some of the first team, the teams that won first. And so, but it's sad that you want to win it all, but you got to realize that there are other great teams out around, and along with the teams, the coaches, and I had a lot of friends, coaching friends that I think about now, and whether it would be in Eagle Grove or people when I was at Fort Dodge or in Waterloo. I could just go on and reminisce about some of the people. And now that I keep in touch with some of them, it's nice. And I just had a good time.
You were talking about how many student athletes you had when you coached at West. So did you have to run 2 or 3 practices, or did you run? Because I'm trying to think. The West High Wrestling Room is tiny.
Yes, it is.
I don't know how you would get.
It was.
Yeah, I don't know how you get all those guys in there. So did you run split practices, or how did you do that?
Well, we really didn't. There was one period of a couple of years we did have to go split. In other words, I'd come back at night and have a workout with a group of guys that I didn't work out with just after school. But it was pretty crowded. And at one period of time when I first went, I had a better wrestling room in Eagle Grove than I did in Waterloo the first time. I was under the stadium, and actually the people that I had there were represented the mat. My wrestlers that weren't wrestling were the mat, the protective mat. They were all around the room, and so if some of the wrestlers that was wrestling and working out would bump into them, they would bump into them rather because they even have radiators. There were radiators there. So yeah, it's funny, and I'm sometimes I think back about all those times. But golly sakes, it was sure fun.
You're listening to 1650 The Fan. Show is On the Mat. This is Jeff Bradley and Bob Siddens. So, Bob, take me back to West High against East High. And, I don't remember any of those, but I've heard so many stories from so many people in the Cedar Valley that it was an event. And you better come early because you weren't getting in the gym, no matter where it was at.
Yeah, Jeff, actually, there were probably close to 2,000 or 2,500 people there. And I think you'll probably remember the story, and I'll kind of share it with you. At East High, where there had been quite a lot of racial things going on in Waterloo at that time. And everybody was trying to cool things down. Mm-hmm. And we had Dave Nadvig was the coach at East High, and we both had some good teams, and Dave was a fine person. And I always think of Dave when I went to his, he had passed away, and I went to his wife's funeral, and he had three sons that were kind of friends of my sons, Scott and Todd. Mm-hmm. And so we got reminiscing a little bit at this funeral. And I said, it's kind of interesting. When Dave retired and I retired, we became much better friends. And,
that's right.
Because there was so much going on. But this one night, there was a lot of action, and it wasn't a racial problem. What it was really was two groups that were trying to, one, the Disciples of Peace were trying to cool things in Waterloo, and the other was the ones that were causing a lot of trouble. And so they used the wrestling meet east-west at that time to they used the meat and all. And so what happened was when there was a little flurry, and I think Rich Bennick was with me. That was the year that Rich was not wrestling, but he was my assistant. And Reese Wilson was wrestling, and somebody came out of the stands, and I happened to be at the wrong place at the wrong time because I got hit over the head with a chair. And my wife, actually, my two oldest daughters, Joellen and Beth, were with me at that time. And but I, Jeff, I used to get a lot of people would call from all over the country about this thing that fracas at the East High, mm-hmm. And I would always tell them it was not a racial problem. It was just one group was trying to make the other group look bad, and they used the wrestling meet as that happened, and I just happened to be at the wrong place at the wrong time and got hit over the head.
So you're in, I don't know how many halls of fame. You have a book written about you, if not one, more than one. You have a building named after you over there at West High. It's the gymnasium, right? So
right.
All sorts of accolades and awards. And this is just kind of, I'm curious, where have you put all these awards? Are they out, or are they like you have a storage shed for them because you've had so many awards that? Well, what would you do with all those,
Jeff? Where we're living right now, down in the basement, but it's carpeted and all. It's all lined with all of these Hall of Fame type of things, and I don't want to say anything derogatory about any of the Hall of Fames, but there are so many Hall of Fames. Right. And I think I have been fortunate enough as an official, as a coach, and as an athletic director, and my involvement, I think I've been involved with about 24 Hall of Fames. And I don't want to disregard any of them, but there's so many Hall of Fames, it's like getting a lifetime membership to the PTA.
That's right. So as you look back on your life, is there anything you wish you would have done? I missed that opportunity, or are you still looking forward and going, I want to do this next month or next year or next week?
No, the wonderful things that take place right now are some of the young men that I've been involved with. Gable, Dale Anderson. Now, Dale Anderson is a lawyer now in Crystal Lake, Illinois. Mm-hmm. And Dale was a 2-time national champion. And I could tell you some stories about Dale. But a wonderful young man. And I was just, happened to be at the right place at the right time, Jeff. And I had such wonderful young men and with all these stories. And that's who I think about all the time.
Well, we've got just about a little less than a minute, Bob. Do you have one little quick officiating story you want to? Because, the coaches are always getting on the officials, and then you've done both. You've coached and officiated. Anything you want to say about your officiating history?
Well, actually, the interesting times that I had officiating, Myron Roderick down at Oklahoma State and Tommy Evans at Oklahoma. I used to go down for about 5 years and would referee that meet down there. And I'll tell you, that was an exciting thing to happen and an exciting thing to, and I have quite a number of stories there with the officiating and all. But working the national tournaments, working the Big Ten, and the wonderful thing about it, Jeff, is my association with the coaches, with the young people, Bobby Douglas, that I refereed quite a number of his matches, and but I could go on and on and on with it.
Well, Bob, I want to thank you for being a guest on the show, and thanks everybody for listening and supporting the world's greatest sport, amateur wrestling. Good night.
You've been listening to On the Mat, the Cedar Valley's longest-running radio show devoted entirely to wrestling. Brought to you by Rolling Ford and the National Wrestling Hall of Fame Dan Gable Museum on 1650 The Fan.
This show is part of the Mat Talk Podcast Network. For more wrestling podcasts, head over to MatTalkOnline.com.